What's up with vaping? I'm George Hawes, coordinator of Community Connections, Tobacco-Free Lincoln County, and there is a lot of interest and concern, I should say, regarding vaping now, especially amongst our youth. So hopefully we'll provide some information that will be useful, especially to parents. In the way of summary, what this presentation will discuss is that electronic cigarettes come in many different forms. They have become very popular with youth, including right here in Lincoln County in the last couple of years. They may cause serious, lasting lung damage. The nicotine harms developing brains and is very addictive. But help is available for those who want to quit. Also, we'll touch just a moment on some things to watch for as far as new products that will come down the pipeline in the market. Electronic cigarettes come in many forms. They come even in the form of what looks like a pipe or a cigar, tank and mod forms. And the newer forms look a lot like flash drives that you would put in your computer. There's also a disposable e-cigarette that looks actually like a cigarette. And then there are some other forms, including watches, pens, and so forth, that are easy to have, and people may not realize that they are electronic cigarettes. The main components are the chamber or the pod that contains the fluid, the battery, and the atomizer, which creates the aerosol that people will inhale. The brand Juul hit the United States market in 2015, and since then, electronic cigarette use by adolescents has shot up drastically. Juul pods originally came in many flavors, such as strawberry milk, fruit medley, apple orchard, cappuccino, strawberry, lemonade, grape, mint, and others. That's one reason that they have been so attractive to teens and young adults. Tobacco and electronic cigarette use by Lincoln County youth is something that was addressed in a Nebraska Risk and Protective Factor student survey conducted in 2018. That survey is conducted on even number years, and typically every school in Lincoln County will participate. The survey is administered by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Bureau of Sociological Research, and this chart shows some data from 2014, 2016, and 2018. You can see county level data by going to the Bureau of Sociological Research website that's listed here. In 2014, the students were not asked about electronic cigarette use, but were asked, of course, about tobacco use. The top line in every case is 12th graders, and the middle line, 10th graders, and the lower line, the light blue line, 8th graders. And as you can see, general tobacco use has gone down somewhat in that time period. Actually, before that, it had started to decrease general tobacco use. But then electronic cigarette use has shot up drastically. They asked about that in 2016 and then again in 2018, and the survey will be conducted again in 2020. You can see that from 2016 to 2018, use of electronic cigarettes shot by 12th graders shot up from about 22% to 47% of the youth saying that they had used electronic cigarettes at least once in the previous 30 days. 10th graders shot from about 16% to about 27%, and even 8th graders went from about 8% to about 14% who said that they had used electronic cigarettes in the previous 30 days. Recent increases in the use of e-cigarettes is driving increases in tobacco product use among youth. And that is a quote from the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention website. As you see in the previous slide, the general tobacco use by 12th and 10th graders seem to have continued a downward trend from 16 to 18, but among 8th graders, the general tobacco use, which had been trending downward, trended back upward from 2016 to 18. And across the country, we have seen that gains, meaning reduced tobacco use by youth, are now being reversed. The use of electronic cigarettes actually driving increases again in general tobacco. So what happened? Why was there such a drastic increase in the use of electronic cigarettes? Well, we can blame it largely on the company Juul. They came out with attractive flavors and trendy devices. They produced the newer product that looks like a flash drive, and they're not the only one now, but they were among the first and the ones that really drove the increase in electronic cigarette use. Word spread quickly through social media. Kids were using the products, getting on social media, filming, showing video clips, and making it look cool. And then there's the nicotine element. Every Juul device contains nicotine, which is a misconception some people have had. They've thought that there's not nicotine in Juul. Well, every Juul pod has nicotine. And when you bring them in with attractive flavors, get them excited through social media, and then get them hooked by nicotine, we've got a serious problem. Juul liquid contains glycerin, also called VG or glycerol, and propylene glycol, or also abbreviated as PG, and those are solvents. Nicotine is included along with benzoic acid and flavors. Juul and other pod devices, the ones that have the little pod, and then in the device it often looks like a computer flash drive, they use a nicotine salt in a combination with benzoic acid. The nicotine then will enter the aerosol, or the cloud that's produced, at a lower temperature than other forms of nicotine that were more used more in the earlier devices. The more acidic mixture compared with other forms of nicotine then results in a smoother throat hit and is easier for the body to absorb. Another reason that so many youth are using the products. According to the National Cancer Institute, a study compared users of electronic cigarette pods and smokers of regular cigarettes. The median concentration of cotinine, which is a molecule that is formed during the breakdown of nicotine, in the participants' urine samples was more than 50% higher than the urinary cotinine levels reported in a previous study of youth tobacco smoking. In other words, they're taking in more nicotine through the Juul pods and other electronic cigarettes than they were or would be if they were smoking traditional cigarettes. The study also found that 10 puffs from each of the pod products contained considerably more nicotine than 10 puffs from earlier generation electronic cigarettes that use the other form of nicotine. Research shows that kids don't understand addiction very well, said Dr. Rachel Grana, PhD, of the National Cancer Institute's Tobacco Control Research Branch. They just don't understand how serious nicotine addiction is, how easy it is to become addicted, and still some may not realize that nicotine is involved in every one of the FDA, that's National Food and Drug Administration, Real Cost Campaign, which is found on their website, realcost.gov, I believe is what it is. They have a lot of really cool videos and so forth to help youth understand the dangers involved in tobacco use, including electronic cigarettes. It focuses on getting rid of the cost-free mentality and focusing on the fact that e-cigarettes are not harmless and that there are real costs to youth to using the product. Speaking of nicotine itself, nicotine does harm brain development. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, nicotine, quote, can harm adolescent brain development, which continues into the early to mid-20s. These youth's brains are not fully developed until they're in their early to mid-20s, and you combine that with the fact that many of them are using nicotine, we could have a serious problem as it affects the development of the brain. It can affect learning, memory, attention span, and impulse control. It may prime adolescents for addiction to other drugs. And youth who use e-cigarettes may be much more likely to start smoking traditional cigarettes. Something that they may feel is just disgusting, but they start using the e-cigarettes, then they are more likely to transition to the regular cigarettes. Nicotine, in addition to the effects on the brain, can increase blood pressure, can contribute to hardening of the arteries, and can put stress on the heart. That is from the American Heart Association. The solvents, vegetable glycerin and propylene glycol, there is a study to try to determine more clearly what they do to the body. And this study was conducted by the National Institutes of Health. And a quote from them is that surprisingly, these effects, that is gene expression, the effect of nicotine on gene expression in the laboratory mice, were not restricted to the lungs, but extended to the liver, brain, skeletal muscle, and kidney. And these alterations in gene expression could potentially facilitate the onset of adverse health conditions, including lung and metabolic chronic diseases, infections, and cancer. And we're talking about just propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin solvents themselves. It could have a serious adverse effect on the body. In addition, vegetable glycerin and propylene glycol can degrade to form formaldehyde when they're heated. So that is another element that is of a concern because formaldehyde can cause cancer. The flavors and colors themselves can also be harmful. As reported in the Recovery Village, several flavorings, including ones for caramel and cream cheese, for butter, for cinnamon, butterscotch, vanilla, and then the coloring, titanium dioxide, all can be harmful, even aside from the nicotine and the solvents. In addition, electronic cigarettes may and have been shown to release heavy metals, such as lead and nickel. And imagine taking those things into the lungs in a form that can be absorbed deeply into the lungs with adverse long-term effects. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says e-cigarettes, on the other hand, may help adult smokers quit if they are used as a complete substitute for other forms of tobacco. Generally, they're not considered a cessation device, but they may help adult smokers to transition if they use it as a complete substitute to other tobacco and then reduce the nicotine levels gradually to zero and then quit using the electronic cigarettes as well. However, they are not safe for youth, for pregnant women, or adults who are not current tobacco users. They do have harmful substances, as we mentioned, including nicotine, heavy metals, ultrafine particles of chemicals that seep deeply into the lungs, flavorings, and carcinogens, in other words, chemicals that can cause cancer. Now, if you're concerned that someone that you know, maybe a child, might possibly be vaping, these are some things to pay attention to. These aren't necessarily all the signs of vaping. Obviously, if you see a Juul or other device on their person and their backpacks in their rooms, that's a pretty good sign. But here are some other signs. Frequent restroom breaks at school. Interesting flavors like fruit, candy, bubblegum when you're around them. Mood changes, difficulty concentrating, loss of interest in activities and studies, money disappearing. They just don't have enough money because they're spending it on Juul or other electronic cigarettes. Secrecy about what they're doing. And then there are some apps available on for phones related to vaping. And if you find those on their phones, that could be a pretty good indication that they might be using the products. There are many cases where youth were high ability learners, excellent students, excellent athletes, involved in things like Boy Scouts, other extracurricular activities that started using electronic cigarettes, and that kind of took over their lives, and they lost interest in those wholesome activities, and it can cause a very serious disruption in their progress toward becoming achieving adults. Though a lot of teens and young adults are realizing this is not what they want, and there is a texting program that is called This Is Quitting. They can text the word ditch Juul, DITCHJUUL, to 88709. So send a text to the number 88709 and just put in it ditch Juul. And then immediately they're connected to where they get in with some resources available right through a texting program. Parents, for more information and help, can text the word quit to, and this phone number, 202-899-7550. This is Quitting program is conducted by the Truth Initiative, which has been around for several years, that provides excellent resources to help combat youth use of tobacco products, including electronic cigarettes. And for more information, you can go to truthinitiative.org/thisisquitting. For tobacco in general, the Quit line has been available all over the country for a long time. Just simply 1-800-QUIT-NOW. A lot of adults especially have found resources to quit using tobacco by calling this Quit line, and it, like the texting program just referred to, is free of charge, and it's confidential and available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week throughout the year. Often they have nicotine replacement therapy products such as patches, lozenges, and gum available free of charge to those who qualify medically. So I encourage people to take advantage of 1-800-QUIT-NOW, or specifically for teens and young adults who want to quit using electronic cigarettes. This is quitting. Texting ditch Juul to 8. You can learn more by going to a number of websites. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention site, simply cdc.gov/e. cdc.gov/e-cigarettes. You can also go to Tobacco Free Lincoln County site, which is part of the Community Connections website, communityconnectionslc.org/TFLC. You can also go to the Tobacco Free Nebraska site, and they're part of the Department of Health and Human Services of Nebraska. It's dhhs.ne.gov/pages/tobacco free Nebraska, with hyphens between those three words, .aspx. And that is the end of this presentation. Be sure and seek out more information. Try to be well informed and take this concern very seriously.